So, having worked in the nursing profession for 35 years, the impact of the coronavirus on healthcare workers is very hard for me to read about. It reminds me of the AIDS epidemic in the 80s. Working at that time, not knowing what AIDS was, how it spread, only knowing that the people that I was caring for were dying no matter what treatment we gave them. So back then, I used the grief model of Kubler-Ross to help me with the losses. And I've been using that model lately now to help me stay in my Dharma practice with the coronavirus impact. Because there's a lot of loss and grief now. And when adversity strikes, grounding in our spiritual practice to manage our mind is the best support. So using these stages of grief as a framework to monitor my reaction and then working with them by applying the Dharma has been very helpful. And so I thought to share that a little bit today with what I've been doing. And so the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. It's important to know that these 5 stages aren't experienced in a linear sequence, and not every stage is experienced. One can bounce in and out of any of these stages multiple times while experiencing loss, and that certainly has been my experience. But it's helpful to identify what stage I'm in on any particular day then to know what Dharma to apply. So the first stage of grief is denial, and some common reactions include feeling numb and paralyzed, or numb and shifting into action. It's the mind that minimizes and narrows perspective. Often it's fueled by adrenaline and the fight and flight or freeze response. Denial, though, can serve to pace one's feelings of grief so that one is not totally overwhelmed by the enormity of the situation. And as the denial and shock wear off, the healing process can begin. So remembering this stage, I remember how things often unfold does not match my expectations. So I try to remember to slow down, go gently into activities. And then my Dharma practice has been focused on remembering the nature of this existence. This is samsara. But there really is nothing surprising here. And then that leads me to think of renunciation, to focus on the safe direction of going for refuge. The second stage is anger. This arose in my mind as I heard the news of how the government is responding to this epidemic in such a chaotic manner. Reading about the lack of adequate medical equipment for those caring for the sick. So the common response is to blame others. Anger also arises easily when I make judgments based on partial understanding. Approaching this epidemic in terms of the innumerable causes and conditions can keep my perspective open, broader. There's not one reason for everything that is happening, and many virtuous actions are happening in the midst of this epidemic. Remembering this helps me to keep a very balanced perspective and not focus only on the loss and the ineptitude. And also acknowledging and not stuffing anger if it arises is helpful, but then applying the antidotes, so not staying in it, getting back out of that. And I also realized reading too much news, especially the kind that is quite judgmental or sensational, is really not helpful at all. So I've narrowed my reading to a balanced news that doesn't have all the sensational stuff to it. It's lower key, and that's been helpful. The third stage is bargaining. This is like false hope, hoping to get life back to how it was before the virus came, wishing circumstances to be like they were before. If loved ones or we get sick, then getting stuck in a what-if mind. The what-ifs cause us to find fault in ourselves and what we think we could have done differently, replaying our decisions and actions. This is like working with doubt. I don't let my mind second guess. I remind myself I did and am doing the very, very best I can with the information that I have in the moment. And that's all any of us can do. That's enough. The fourth stage is depression. Now, this is not clinical depression. It is a profound sadness due to loss. Emotional pain is present. Sometimes it comes in the form of falling into deep personal distress when thinking about others and their suffering. When I fall into personal distress, the focus is turned to me being center stage. It's not a helpful mind. So again, my perspective, I open my perspective to see the positive developments happening so that I can keep a balanced mind. That's hard to do because the losses are numerous. Losing loved ones and acquaintances to the virus, not being able to be with somebody that is dying, not being able to have a typical funeral are some of the most difficult losses. Then losing jobs, regular paycheck, retirement savings, feeling isolated and not being able to hug grandkids, friends, family. These are also difficult. Another one for me is losing faith in the government's competency. Is another one that I'm experiencing. So again, remembering that this is samsara, this is the nature of our existence, but what can we do? Bring the mind back to a balanced place, because that is the actual reality. It is not only one big, huge loss. There are many, many things that are happening in this world that are joyful, that are beautiful, that are full of people caring and the kindness of others. And so we remember all the kindness that is happening in this situation, remembering all of the people who have recovered from this illness, thinking about how I can contribute through action, through practice and prayer. The fifth stage is acceptance. This is recognizing the new reality and learning to adapt to it. We reorganize roles, we make new connections in innovative ways. We listen to our needs, we change and grow. We find meaning in our experience. Our perspective has shifted. For example, at the Abbey, we're sharing the Dharma through live streaming and using Zoom to keep connected to others. And so even though it's a very difficult time, we don't lose our focus and our purpose and what nourishes and feeds our spiritual practice. Accepting the new normal, we have space to turn our attention to others and to care for our own minds with compassion and love. So in this difficult time of losses, let's all stay grounded in our practice, applying what we have learned to keep a wide perspective, to let in not just the heartache, but also the joy. It's a wonderful opportunity to deepen our practice of love and compassion to others and ourselves.